The wind in Texas always carries the taste of yellow sand, swirling with hay crumbs from the ranch and slapping against the tin walls of the barn, like the old wind chime Father could never get to ring properly when he was alive. At the breakfast table, the coffee had just been refilled when Aunt Margaret's silver spoon clattered sharply against her porcelain plate. "Elias, you must sort out Lena's business as soon as possible." At the church gathering last week, Mrs. Mason was already saying the Hancock girl is too wild to rein in. I said nothing, my gaze drifting past the window to where Lena knelt by the cattle pen, brushing Spot's coat. Her cowboy hat was pulled low, covering half her face, leaving only a dogtail grass she'd clamped between her teeth waving in the breeze. Standing beside her was Isabella, touching up her lipstick in a hand mirror. She was Aunt Margaret's granddaughter, who'd been living on the ranch for 2 years, always copying the local girls in the community, hoping to marry someone respectable. "Justin from the Lockley family will come for dinner next Saturday." I chewed over the words like tobacco in my mouth, trying to make it sound like a suggestion rather than an order. But the comb in Lena's hand jammed in Spot's fur with a click. She snapped her head up, her blue eyes blazing with the midday Texas sun, dazzling enough to make me squint. "Elias, say that again?" Her voice was as cold and sharp as a beer pulled straight from the ice bucket. I took a deep breath, letting the earthy scent of the ranch fill my nostrils. Since Father passed away, I'd been running the Hancock Ranch. Aunt Margaret badgered me constantly, ranting that a woman's worth lies in her family, and she always held Isabella up as an example, only 20 years old and already engaged to a banker's son. At 25, Lena was long past the marrying age for a Texas girl. The Lockleys' ranch bordered ours, and Justin himself was an agronomy master's graduate from the state university. He could fix tractors and play the guitar. At the church picnic last week, he'd slipped me a note, saying he was head over heels for Lena. More importantly, the Lockleys had offered to cover the costs of upgrading our irrigation system next year, something Aunt Margaret had been eyeing for half a year. To me, this was a match made in heaven. "Justin likes you," I softened my tone, "and the Lockleys have the most advanced irrigation system in the state. They're willing to." "I don't like him." Lena stood up, flinging the comb to the ground. Her cowboy boots kicked up clouds of dust. "When he looks at me, it's like he's staring at a purebred heifer, only caring if I can bear good calves." Isabella happened to walk over and scoffed. "Sis, stop putting on this 'I'm different' act. Emily from the Mason family married the feed dealer, and now she gets to go to Dallas for spa days every week. That's the proper life." Lena's face flushed bright red. She grabbed a handful of grass clippings and threw them at Isabella. "If you want to be a caged canary, be my guest, don't drag me into it." I frowned. Lena had never been like other Texas girls. While others learned to bake apple pies, she was taking photos. While others entered beauty pageants, she was climbing canyons. Last year, she'd secretly applied to the School of Visual Arts in New York, and I'd torn up her application when I found it. "New York's full of liars and addicts," I'd snarled, tossing the shredded paper in her face. "Hancocks stay on the ranch and live a steady life." Aunt Margaret had screamed even louder, calling Lena immoral, and claiming her street photos were an insult to God. Isabella would always chime in, repeating the gossip from the community, telling Lena, "Everyone thinks you're out of your mind." This argument was more heated than any before. Lena smashed the blue and white porcelain plate that had belonged to Mother. Isabella shrieked, "You're going to ruin this family." Aunt Margaret charged in, ready to slap Lena, but I held her back. I threatened to cut off Lena's allowance, and Aunt Margaret vowed, "If you don't behave, we'll lock you up." Then on Friday night, Lena suddenly knocked on my door, her eyes red, saying she'd agree to meet Justin. I thought she'd finally come to her senses, so I told the cook to make her favorite barbecued ribs and polished Father's old pocket watch until it shone, preparing to give it to my future brother-in-law. Isabella, meanwhile, tried on a new dress, muttering, "Finally, We can shut Mrs. Mason up. Saturday evening arrived, and Justin showed up in a crisp suit, holding a bouquet of sunflowers, Lena's least favorite flower, because she said sunflowers spin around the sun their whole lives, with no backbone. I told the housekeeper to fetch Lena, only to find her room empty. On her bed lay a neatly folded cowboy jacket, with a crumpled note underneath, the handwriting as messy as if blown by the wind. Elias, I'm going to New York. Don't look for me. Justin's face turned alternately green and white. He stayed less than 10 minutes before leaving. I squeezed the note until my knuckles whitened. Aunt Margaret stamped her foot in fury. Lena's going to make the Hancocks a laughingstock across the county. That afternoon, she went around the community spreading rumors, claiming Lena had been possessed by the devil. Isabella locked herself in her room and cried, not out of worry for Lena, but fear that people would say she lived with a lunatic and ruin her own marriage prospects. The old ranch hand tried to comfort me, the young lady's just acting on impulse. She'll be back in a few days. But I knew Lena's stubbornness. Once she set her mind to something, not even 10 bulls could pull her back. To make matters worse, the Lockleys sent someone over the next day to cancel the irrigation system partnership. Over the next month, I sent 3 groups of people to New York to find her, but they all came back empty-handed. Lena had taken no phone, no ID, she might as well have vanished from the face of the earth. The gossip in the community grew uglier by the day. Some said she'd run off with a hobo, others claimed she was doing indecent work in New York. Mrs. Mason even cornered Isabella at the supermarket, feigning concern. Do you want me to introduce you to a psychiatrist? Aunt Margaret came to the ranch every day to yell at me for not being able to control your sister, blaming Lena for every drop in the ranch's profits. Then one morning, I received an email from Marcus, a college classmate who now worked as a cop in New York. It contained just one photo and a line of text. Elias, is this Lena? She's begging near the Brooklyn Bridge. The girl in the photo wore a faded, tattered coat, her hair a mess, huddled under the bridge with an enamel bowl in her arms. Even with her face smudged with dirt, I recognized her instantly. She had a tiny mole behind her left ear, just like Mother. I booked a flight to New York that very day. When the plane landed at JFK Airport, I stared at the forest of skyscrapers outside the window, my stomach churning. Texas had wide, open skies, but here the buildings rose like impenetrable walls, suffocating me. Marcus picked me up in a beat-up police car. Brooklyn's a rough area, he said, turning the steering wheel. Lots of homeless people and addicts. Prepare yourself. We drove from Manhattan to Brooklyn, the neighborhood growing shabbier with every block. Graffiti covered the walls, drunks lay passed out beside dumpsters, and kids in outlandish clothes danced on the streets. Marcus parked near the Brooklyn Bridge and pointed to a figure under the overpass. That's her. I hurried over, my heart pounding so hard it felt like it would burst. The girl was hunched over, speaking to a passing pedestrian. I called out, Lena. She jolted upright, her smudged face unable to hide her surprise. Elias? What are you doing here? I knelt down, staring at her red, chapped hands. Anger and worry tangled in my chest. Is this how you want to waste your life? You have a ranch, a family back in Texas, and you'd rather beg here? Lena turned her head away, tucking the enamel bowl behind her back. I'm not wasting my life. I'm doing fine. Doing fine? I laughed bitterly, reaching for her arm. Come home with me. I'll talk to Justin. If you want to study photography, I'll support you, no more interference. I'm not going back. Lena pulled her arm away, stepping back. It's freer here than in Texas. We stood frozen under the bridge as passers-by shot us curious glances. Marcus stepped forward to mediate. Elias, let's find a place to sit and talk this through. Eventually, I managed to get Lena into the car. I found a nearby cafe and ordered hot cocoa and sandwiches. Lena ate ravenously, the dirt on her face melting away in the warm air, revealing her true features. How have you survived this past month? I asked. She set down her sandwich and took a sip of hot cocoa. When I first got to New York, my money ran out fast, so I had to sleep under the bridge. Then I met a girl named Mia. She taught me how to beg, really, it's just talking to passers-by. If they're willing, they give me a little money. Talking to strangers? I frowned. Don't you know how dangerous that is? What if you run into a bad guy? People here are kinder than you think. Lena pulled a small camera from her tattered coat pocket, its casing worn smooth. I bought this used camera with the money I made. I take photos of people on the streets every day. They're all happy to let me, and some even tell me their stories. She pulled up a photo of a boy in a graffiti-covered jacket. His name's Tyler. He's from Texas too, his family kicked him out because he likes guys. The wind in Texas just shoves you into the dirt, but here, people actually want to see who you really are. I thought of how the community had shunned Tyler's family, of Mrs. Mason spitting that homosexuals deserve hell, and my throat tightened. I stared at the camera, my emotions a jumble. Even when she was begging, she'd never given up her passion. Come home, I said, softening my tone. I'll turn one of the ranch rooms into a darkroom for you. Take whatever photos you want, I'll never stand in your way again. Lena was silent for a long time before finally nodding. I let out a sigh of relief and booked our flight back to Texas for the next day. That night, I put her up in a guest room at Marcus's place. Watching her emerge from the shower, clean and dressed in fresh clothes, she looked like the beautiful Texas girl she'd always been. The next morning, on our way to the airport, Lena suddenly spoke up. Elias, can we detour to Soho first? I need to pick something up. I assumed she wanted to grab the photos she'd taken, so I agreed without hesitation. Soho was lined with art galleries and studios. Lena led me into an elegantly decorated gallery. The owner, a man with long hair, spotted her and hurried over, beaming. Lena, there you are. Your exhibition's almost ready, we're just waiting for you to sign off on the final details. I froze, turning to Lena. Exhibition? What exhibition? Lena smiled and pulled me into the main gallery space. The walls were covered with photos, scenes of New York streets, homeless people under bridges, breakdancing kids, an old hot dog vendor, every image brimmed with life. The centerpiece was a large print of a girl in a tattered coat, huddled under the Brooklyn Bridge with an enamel bowl, the sunlight catching her face perfectly. I pointed at the photo, too stunned to speak. It's my series, City Lights, Lena said. This begging I told you about? It's research and photography. Mia's the curator here. I've had this exhibition planned for ages, I just never told you because I knew you'd never let me come to New York. The gallery owner clapped me on the shoulder. Mr. Hancock, Lena's one of the most talented photographers I've ever met. Her work is full of love for life and compassion for the underdogs. A lot of collectors have already reserved her pieces. I looked from the photos on the wall back to Lena, and suddenly everything clicked. She hadn't run to New York on a whim to beg, she'd planned this all along to chase her dream. She dressed in rags and let Marcus snap that photo on purpose, just to get me to come to New York and see her hard work for myself. I'm sorry, Elias, Lena said, her voice tinged with regret. I know I lied to you, but I had no other choice. I don't want a life in Texas that's mapped out from start to finish. I want to do what I love. The anger had long since faded, replaced by pride and guilt. I'd always thought I was acting in her best interest, but I'd never truly understood her ambitions. I'm the one who should apologize, I said. I shouldn't have forced my wishes on you, and I never should have torn up your application. Lena smiled, her eyes glistening with tears. That day, I canceled our flight back to Texas and stayed for her exhibition opening. The turnout was incredible. Artists, collectors, and even the people from her photos showed up. Tyler brought his band to play, and the hot dog vendor handed out fresh sausages. When Lena stood on stage and said, "I want to capture the light that tradition refuses to see," I suddenly realized she was more of a Hancock than I was. Father had given up a city job to run the ranch because it was his dream, and Lena was doing the same for her art. I called Aunt Margaret. She yelled at me for 20 minutes, but when I sent her photos of Lena's work, she fell silent. Her last words were, "Don't let her get hurt." After the exhibition, Lena didn't return to Texas right away. She signed a contract with the gallery and stayed in New York to keep creating. I went back to the ranch, rented out a portion of the land, and used the money to rent her an apartment in New York with a built-in darkroom. Isabella secretly emailed Lena, admitting, "I've always admired you," and updating her on the community gossip. Mrs. Mason had started collecting Lena's postcard prints, bragging that, "the Hancocks have an artist in the family." Every month, I received a package of photos from Lena, New York snowfall, cherry blossoms on the streets, and group shots of her with Tyler and the others. This spring, Lena's work went on tour in Paris. I flew out to see her, and there she was, in an elegant dress, talking to visitors with confidence and poise. After the exhibition, we sat at a cafe by the Seine. She suddenly said, "Elias, Justin actually contacted me a while back." I blinked in surprise. "What did he say?" "He said he never liked me, his mom forced him to go on that blind date," Lena laughed. "He's with a male vet now, and they're really happy." I laughed too, raising my coffee cup. To our own versions of happiness. The wind off the Seine carried the scent of coffee. In that moment, I finally understood, family isn't about chaining someone to your side, it's about supporting them as they chase their dreams. Lena's begging days were just a detour on her way to the light, and I'd finally learned to let go, to let her soar to the sky that belonged to her. Now, whenever someone asks about Lena Hancock, I say it with pride, she's an artist, shining in New York, Paris, all over the world. I've turned one of the ranch barns into a gallery, lined with her photos. Isabella lingers in front of them every time she visits. Last week, she told me she's going to study art at a community college in Austin. The wind in Texas still carries the taste of yellow sand, but when it blows through those photos, I swear I can hear Lena's laughter. That's the sound of freedom, and the most precious sound in the entire Hancock legacy.